Good morning. Happy Gimel Thomas. This is the first time I'm going to record an audio of one of my Torah dvars, and I hope I can do it well. I have not done this before, and I'm very nervous, so please bear with me, and let's get going. The name of this particular dvar is the Ram of Akedas Yitzhak, a different perspective. It's dedicated to the merit and memory of Rabbi Kalanimus of Pious. Here we go. Jeremiah declared, "They have built altars to burn their children with fire as offerings unto Baal, which I commanded not, nor did I speak it, nor has it arisen in my thought." What does this mean? The Talmud Bavli has a very strange comment and interpretation of this verse from Jeremiah. He breaks it down into, the Talmud Bavli breaks it down into three parts. The which I commanded not part, the Talmud Bavli says, this refers to Mesha, the king of Moab, who, while in the midst of a battle with the armies of Edom and Israel, he sacrificed his firstborn son atop the city walls on the assumption that such an offering would be pleasing to God. Nor did I speak it. This refers to Jephthah's daughter. This is as related in Judges 11. Jephthah made a vow that if he returned victoriously from battle against the Ammonites, the very first thing that comes out of the door of his home shall be God's, and I shall bring it as an ascent offering. Much to his dismay, the first thing that came out of the house to greet him upon his return home was his only daughter. Nor has it arisen in my thought. This refers to Yitzhak, son of Abraham. Whoa! What is Akedas Yitzhak doing on this list? After all, Akedas Yitzhak is not a sacrifice unto a false god. Why is the Akedas Yitzhak, the binding of Isaac, on this list? Well, I've sort of put this around in my mind, and I think that it's there only because the only way Akedas Yitzhak makes sense if it's viewed as a prophetic act, like Jeremiah's yoke, Ezekiel lying on his left side, Hosea's marriage to Gomer, Isaiah's walking naked and barefoot, Eliyahu in the widow's jar, and Yehoshua's circuits of the city and the conquering of Jericho. Despite what Abraham may have thought, God never intended that Yitzhak should be shechted. Shechted means killed or cut. They cut his throat like they would cut an animal's throat. This is an abomination. Midrash Rabbah and Rashi agree on this point. Said Avram to God, I don't understand. Yesterday you said to me, and Isaac shall be your seed. Then you said to me, take your son and bring him up as an ascent offering. And now you tell me, don't do anything to him. God replied, Avram, I shall not violate my covenant, and that which emerges from my lips I shall not change. When I said to you, take your son, I did not tell you to slaughter him. I said, bring him up. You brought him up and fulfilled my command. Now, take him down. What is going on here? Avram might not have known consciously that God didn't intend him to kill his son, but his body certainly did. Says Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Rimanov, so completely had Avram dedicated himself to God that his body had become instinctively responsive to the divine will. This explains why Avraham had to send forth his hand to pick up the knife. Up until that point, his limbs did everything. Chopping the wood, saddling the donkey, building the altar, freely and spontaneously, as these actions were desired by God. But because it was not God's desire that Yitzhak actually be killed, Avram's hand resisted the action, and he had to forcibly send forth his hand to pick up the knife. Be that as it may, Avraham was nevertheless so engrossed in the process of shechting his son that the angel of God who commanded him to stop, to drop the knife, had to repeat his name twice to get his attention. And it was accounted to Avram as righteousness when he demonstrated that he was prepared to act cruelly for God's sake. Excuse me for saying so, but the divine will itself seemed uncharacteristically cruel, fraught with incredulity and contradiction, seemingly to deem good to be evil and evil to be good. Everybody agrees that child sacrifice is evil. The Malbim unequivocally states if Abraham had actually slaughtered his son, it would have been an act of murder and an abomination abhorrent to God. So also Abraham's soul, so perfectly attuned to the divine will, was opposed to this deed. So to my limited mind at least, it makes no sense at all that Avraham Avinu is praised for setting out to shecht his son. If all agree that child sacrifice is evil, is it meritorious to do evil for God's sake? Does that even make sense? What is going on here? One clue to deciphering this mystery is that Akedas Yitzhak happened after the covenant between the parts, where Abraham Avinu was given a vision of the whole of Jewish history, the wars, the exiles, the persecutions, the pogroms, the Holocaust, the war of Gog and Magog, what was destined to happen to each and every one of his descendants in the future, near and far. And Abraham and we agreed to all of it. That's what the Ari says. The second clue is the miraculous appearance of the ram on the scene. All day long, Abraham saw the ram tangled in a tree, leaping free, tangled in a shrub, leaping free, tangled in a bush, leaping free. God said to Abraham, Abraham, this is your children. They're going to be getting caught up in their sins and tangled in the empires, from Babylon to Media, from Media to Greece, from Greece to Rome. Said Abraham, shall it go on like this forever? Said God to him, in the end, they will be redeemed with the horns of this ram. That's why Akedas Yitzhak was a prophetic act. Yitzhak lived because God does not go back on his promises, and God had many times before this promised Avraham Avinu descendants from Yitzhak as numerous as the stars in the sky. Avraham dropped the knife when the angel of God spoke to him, and he realized that God did not desire him to shecht Yitzhak, but desired him to shecht the ram instead. Says Rabbi Bezalel of Kobrin, when Yitzhak was bound on the altar, his original soul left his body and entered into the ram. Thus, the sacrifice of the ram was regarded as if Yitzhak himself was being sacrificed. So, Abraham transferred his act of sacrifice to the ram. With every action he did, he imagined himself doing the very same action to his son. So completely did Abraham insert himself in this role that emotionally and psychologically the experience was virtually identical to what it would have been had he actually sacrificed his son. To the extent that our sages use the expression the ashes of Yitzhak when referring to the ashes of the ram which remain mounted on the altar as an eternal remembrance of Abraham's deed. Midrash Tanhuma and Rashi agree. With each action Abraham performed with the ram, he prayed to God, may this be as if I am doing it to my son, as if my son is being slaughtered, as if my son's blood is being sprinkled on the altar, as if he is being skinned, as if he is being burned and made into ashes. Avraham Avinu understood that when he did these things to the ram, every single one of them would happen to his children by Yitzhak, and more. For, like the sacrificial ram, whose every part was put to good and holy use, our enemies throughout the long centuries have used our holy bodies in many novel, unholy, and macabre ways. We've been skinned alive and our flesh has been used for lampshades. Our fat has been rendered and used for soap. The gold in our teeth has been extracted from our corpses and used to fund the extermination of our people. Our hair has been shaved and used to make slippers for Nazi submarine crews. We've been slaughtered like cattle. And forget about sprinkling the blood on the altar. The blood on the floor of the Holy of Holies of the Second Temple during the destruction reached the height of a man's knee. Our babies have been baked in bricks, cut out of their mothers' wombs and dashed against the rocks. We've been hung and beaten and burned alive at the stake and in Nazi ovens. We've been made into a mound of ashes as tall as Mount Moriah. It's so obvious. We are Yitzhak's ram. And the meaning of Akedas Yitzhak is that it's our self-sacrifice which completes that of Abraham and Yitzhak. What Abraham did in Akedas Yitzhak and what our martyrs have done in Jewish history will precipitate the redemption, which completes the holy mission of the Jewish people on earth. May this redemption come swiftly and in our lifetimes, and may we see it with our very own eyes.